So I would like to introduce Leela Chapman. Leela has worked with Greenmarket program for Grow NYC for 8 years and currently oversees 15 of their lower Manhattan markets, including Abingdon Square.
You want to come up and practice?
Sure. And then I just jump in here. Get that right.
Yes. Guys, feel free to correct me if there's anything on your Thank you to Ted and to the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation, as well as to the Jefferson Market Library for organizing tonight's talk. I'm Leela Chapman. I work for the Greenmarket program of the not-for-profit Grow NYC, coordinating a number of their downtown farmers markets. And tonight I am honored to should I stand closer or just project more?
I hear you better if you stand closer to the mic.
Okay, so I'll lean forward a little
So, I mean, is that awkward for you to lean into the mic like that, or
That's
I mean?
fine. No, that's good.
Okay.
So tonight I am honored to introduce our speaker, Barry Benepe. Barry Benepe is an architect, an urban planner, and a native New Yorker. We know him simply as Barry in the Greenmarket office, everyone in our office. Barry is an architect, an urban planner by trade, as well as a native New Yorker. It's very important. In the Greenmarket office, we know him simply as Barry, and even those of us who have not had the pleasure of working with him, everyone knows who it is when we say the name Barry. Barry founded the Greenmarket program along with a fellow planner, Bob Lewis, in 1976 with our first farmers market under the Queensboro Bridge. And by doing so, he created an elegant solution to two difficult problems. One was the struggle of family farmers in our region who were struggling with lack of access to good markets for their products, going bankrupt, disappearing, shutting down, losing farmland. The other was bad produce and bad food in New York City. Pink, mealy, mushy tomatoes, limp, brown lettuce, things that were not very appetizing. So by connecting growers and eaters, Barry changed the landscape of New York City permanently. Barry founded Greenmarket as a producer-only market, which means that only farmers, fishermen, and food producers can sell what they themselves grow, raise, catch, or bake in the markets. Barry retired from operating the Greenmarket program in 1998. However, the program has continued to grow by leaps and bounds. In 2013, we operated 62 farmers markets in the 5 boroughs of New York City, including 23 year-round farmers markets, which is a particular area of growth in recent years, such as the Abingdon Square Market, the Union Square Market, you'll hear more about those later tonight, and the Tompkins Square Farmers Market. Thankfully, Barry continues to use his vision to improve communities today. He serves on the board of the Fine Arts Federation of New York. He composes a monthly column for the Westview News on planning, architecture, preservation, and parks. And in Saugerties, New York, he also serves on the board of the Comprehensive Planning Committee, as well as the Historic Preservation Commission. And he and his wife, Judith, assist in the operation of the Saugerties Farmers Market. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Barry Benepe.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Cheryl, and other members of the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation and Grow New York. It's indeed an honor to be with you tonight. Pleasure, and it's wonderful to greet old friends and celebrate Greenmarket. And as you realize, Greenmarket is not an invention, it's a recreation. The farmers markets have been with us for hundreds of years. We're looking out for things which work for us today. Greenmarket began really before it began. It began with the letter that my father sent to his mother in 1938. I'd like to read from that letter because it's the beginning of the farm experience for me when I was 10. It said, "Dear Mother, we have bought a farm near Princess Anne, Maryland called Melody Manor, which is to become the family headquarters. I'll probably arrange to vote there and hope someday to spend most of the year. watching things grow. It has 200 good acres, cows, horses, tractors, chickens, ducks, and a river which flows into the Chesapeake Bay. The house is indifferently built, but well designed by Stanford White. From Elvis tenor in 1905, this is just at the time of his death, we have it furnished even with a boat and tractors and trucks, and naturally we're all very excited. The place is supposed to pay for itself, and if things go completely to pot, support us too. The land is so fertile that, as Charlie McCarthy would say, and I don't know how many of you remember Charlie McCarthy, puppet, as Charlie McCarthy would say, you just sow the seeds and they jump clear. Of course, farming is not that easy, but it was a good beginning, and the farm is also a connection. I think it's very appropriate that we have GBSHP and Greenmarket together, because the farm connected me not only with growing but with history. And this coin in my hand, which I found in the field, says the date 1796, and the picture of George III on one side and the royalty sitting on a throne holding the pike on the other. I've traced the coins from one of the Caribbean islands, but British currency continued to be used in the colonies until they made their own currency, and eventually we had an American currency. I can't tell you when. And then in addition to this coin, I found lots of arrowheads, axe heads, tools, very few little pieces of pottery. And this would generally show after a rainstorm had washed the soil clear on the stones. I would know to go out in the morning after a rainstorm to look. After this was followed my work as a consultant, and well, there's a jump there between being the age of 10 and becoming a consultant, but it's becoming an architect and a planner, getting my training at MIT, being inspired by such people as Buckminster Fuller, who, unlike tonight, he would start a lecture at 7 and finish at midnight. I will hopefully wind up in an hour and give you a chance to have a discussion. I moved into planning while I was at MIT. I was an architecture major, but I took planning courses. Land economics was a very important course for me there. I studied under Lloyd Rodwin, who asked us a very interesting question. He turned to us and said, you know, you don't own the land you think you do. Can you explain why? And I said, well, very naively, I can't take it with me when I die, so how can I own it? And he said, well, that's an interesting answer, but that's not what I had in mind. In fact, if you have a mortgage, the bank owns it if you don't pay your mortgage. And if you don't pay your taxes, the town or county owns it. So in fact, ownership is not ownership, it's title to land, which is a different direction than we're going on tonight. For us, land is a resource. And it's both a landscape resource and, in our terms, for Greenmarket and the food we eat. It's a very profound source of our well-being. This is what Greenmarket is all about. That's why I think we're all here. These fantastic fruits and vegetables, and there are over 600 varieties out in Greenmarket, from maybe you can tell me 120 farms?
Over 200.
Over 200. And doing a good economic return. We have farmers whose children and grandchildren are now selling food from the farm in the market. It has sustainability in a real sense. So that what we are doing is not discovering something new, but rediscovering something traditional that's been with us a long time. Now, when I graduated, I moved through architecture into planning, and in all cases, architecture and planning became a way of connecting with my environment, both physically, what's around me, and historically what occurred before us. One of the reports I did for a client was part of a series called Early Architecture Series in New York State. It's actually called Architecture Worth Saving. The person who was publishing that didn't want to continue the title, so I developed my own title and said the early architecture of Ulster County would use the same format. But what was unique about this, unlike the earlier books of the series, was a map in the back, and the map was of the entire Ulster County, where Sotheby's exists and also Kingston and other cities. And we made a point here in this map of showing what determined the history and settlement of Ulster County, and what determined the terrain, the soils, and the water courses, especially, so the water is shown in blue. And so houses tend to be located along streams for power and for drinking water and for water for use of growing. Also, water in terms of the creeks and the river is important for transportation. And I worked with local community boards in cities here, so I got familiar with the city political structure, how things get done in New York. So as a consultant, I worked with Community Board 1, assessing the impact of Pier 17 in the historic district, assessing the impact of the city ordained plazas, urban plazas in Midtown, with Community Board 5, and then did an evaluation of the impact of Westway strung along the Hudson River, a proposal which would have put an enormous development of buildings offshore into the river. I was serving Community Board 12, the north end below the bridge, but that was surrounded, that park up there, with a spaghetti of ramps. And so we looked at this, and that, as you know, not through our efforts, but mainly through Marcy Benstock and the efforts on saving the striped bass, led to the People Westway as a project. And now it's simply a park, the Hudson River Park, and it protected the shoreline and views of Hudson River. So I've been working for a consulting firm, and the principal in the firm, Bob Weinberg, was my mentor and a very big inspiration to me, died. And I took over the firm under my own name, and my first employee was Bob Lewis. And he had had good planning experience at the University of Pennsylvania. He studied under Walter McCard, had a very deep sense of land planning and land values. And he also had, which was important for me, done some work as part of a planning team in Woodstock, New York, from whom I wanted to get work in planning and zoning. And he brought other things. He brought a great devotion to preserving farmland. And he made a connection with Richard Poe, who was from the American Farmland. It's a nonprofit which was devoted to saving farmland. And he gave us a small grant, cash grant of $800 to go out and raise some money. We dreamed up this idea of how are we going to save farmland? And we said, well, we look around in the stores here, and the quality of the food, when the peaches arrived in Suffolk County, they were hard and green here in the stores. We couldn't get a local peach. Same with true of tomatoes. The tomatoes we bought were hard, tasteless, dry. The tomatoes out in the country were red, sweet, and juicy. So why couldn't we have these products in New York? And why are these farms submitting to development and being paved over and turned into subdivisions when they produce such wonderful food? So we had to pull these ideas together, and my planning experience, Bob's planning experience, helped us to focus on perhaps looking at combining that traditional linkage between town and country and bringing it together here in New York. So first we wanted to see, well, what is our farm region? Well, this is our farm that I began with in Maryland. It's a little blurry because I shot it out of the scrapbook, but it was a 200-acre farm, as you saw from the letter, and these were our barns, where we kept equipment and some of the animals. Now this is a region that Bob and I looked at, and Bob defined for me being geologist by background, the Great Valley. So it's more than people keep talking about the Hudson Valley. We're part of a much larger soil system. And the interesting thing is that the New York Times, just a few years ago, produced a map which was the opposite of the valley. And it's this map here which shows a wildlife corridor, green but in peril. And this was looking not at the valleys, but the hills surrounding the valleys. So the New York Times article saw the same geography, this big stretch coming down by the Alleghenies and incorporating Hudson Valley, but also the black dirt areas, the areas in New Jersey and farming, and into Pennsylvania. And then, of course, New Jersey had its own very rich soils. So this is a big part of what we're addressing. And New York City is the biggest urban consumer of all these farms. So it's a natural to link this geography to this city. This is Greenmarket's own map, what they produce, showing the location of the farms in the region and the different crops that are grown in those farms. And if you go to any of the farmers markets, you'll find a copy of these at the manager's table, and you can look at it in more detail. And of course, these are the farms themselves. This is one of the richest areas. This is the near Goshen, New York, and it's referred to as a black dirt area. When the farmers first came here from Poland at the turn of the century, of the 19th century, in the late 1880s and 90s, they discovered this rich upland, where the soil was 40 to 60 feet deep. You could not build on it, it was too soft. You couldn't walk on it and sink in it, but you drained it, which they did. You grow great crops of lettuce, onions, love this soil, not so much from corn or apples, but rather for lettuces and corn and greens, and produced enormous amounts. You can see from the size of this operation that it was large. This is probably the farm belonging to S.O. Farms in Goshen. They came to the market the first year, and they're still here. And they're at 175th Street, which is a very thriving market, and at Union Square, and maybe elsewhere, I don't know. And of course, these are the farmers themselves. This is the heart of Greenmarket. These are the people who put their sweat into the soil and their knowledge, and they keep up to date with the best ways of growing and how to improve products. And of course, they don't just go to agricultural school for this, they also test the market. They're very up to date on marketing methods. And Greenmarket is an ideal match for them. When S.O. Farms first came here, they had 75 acres. They said, well, we'll try a few acres with lettuces and see how they do in New York. Within 5 years, they completely reversed. 70 acres are going to Greenmarket, 5 acres going to wholesale. And so it was a great adventure for them and for us. And then there's a personal connection which can't be left out. It's not only with our staff, with the farmers, but with all of you who shop and come to the markets. This is a marriage made in heaven, really. And people will, at the Tompkins Square Market, will be waiting with breakfast to give the farmers when they arrive in the morning. That kind of thing. And then we go and visit the farms to see, is this really farm food? They found it was. And my niece's son, Christopher, is here, and he came into the program to help new farmers join the program. And so he spent a lot of time on farms, and he knows what's going on. He sat up to say hello to people. We opened, well, we looked at the site. In order to get started, we had to look at two things. Where are we going to have the markets in the city? And what's going to pull them there? And where the farmers going to come from? So Bob's job was to find the farmers. He went to the county extension agents. An extension agent comes under they're called college extension agents. Every county has an extension agent, and they know who their farmers are. We also went to the departments of agriculture to have them, because they had a list of farmers who already sold at farm stands or on their own farms at their own display stands. And so we use those lists to find farmers. Bob did, and I would go around to community groups, to community boards, to city agencies to seek their help in locating sites. There are no market sites in the city. The closest we had, and we'll come to that soon, well, first of all, in seeking sites, we also had to seek money, and that was my job pretty much. Although Bob helped with this too, he located some foundation interested in us. And in seeking money, we went to the J.M. Kaplan Fund, and it happened that the executive director there said, well, there's an empty lot near where I live, why don't you put a market there? So that happened to be 59th Street. And this is the opening day of 59th Street. You can see how crowded it was. And this was a very fortunate choice because it was a block from Bloomingdale's to the west and a block from Alexander's to the south. So we had a few people walking by the site. It was also fortunate that the city owned the site. It was small, 50 by 100 and later 200. And it was used by the police to park their cars there. And they actually, and because the Council on the Environment as a sponsor was a good choice, because the Council on the Environment, which is now Grow New York, is made up of two entities, city agency heads, Parks Department, Transportation Department, the mayor sat as co-chair, and business heads. And Marion High School, as wife of the man who ran Time Magazine, made a good business head. And so that helped us pull together resources from financial resources and basically bureaucratic governmental resources. It was a good beginning. So we had a good site, good sponsors, and the ability to raise money for foundations. If we picked the wrong site, we might not have gotten off the ground. And this made us visible. And the first year, as you can see, this is Channel 5 coming to visit us. We had 3 TV networks who came to do us for news shows. And at the end of bad news, they'd always put Greenmarket as a little pleasant ending. So this is the opening day at 59th Street. Isn't it astounding? We had gates, so the gates were closed, and people would stand outside on the sidewalk waiting for the gates to open. And I would not open the gates till every farmer was ready. And they would arrange all the displays. They would stand like the sergeant by his troops, having us go by and inspect them. And when they were all ready, we opened the gates and people just poured in. And you can see how happy this woman is from Keller's Farm selling her vegetables. There was a woman who came in from New Jersey on a flatbed truck, no rails on the side, piled with corn. And she would stand there. She had a wonderful set of braids that ran down her back. And she was smiling and happy and just passing out the corn as fast as she could. And the corn was selling at 2 prices, 10 cents an ear and 15 cents an ear. And they both sold out. The price didn't matter. This is another scene looking down on the market. And this was in 1976 when we opened. In 77, a film was made by a student group from Long Island University, I believe it was, or no, it was the college in Long Island, Stony Brook. Got a wonderful black and white film. I think it's still in the office. And the guy did a brilliant job on a $250 budget. He filmed the market, and people shopping in the market, and then he interviewed the same people, but not at the same time he's doing the film, obviously, he's only one person. And then he superimposed, he edited the film and the people, so you got the voices of people talking. And you had these wonderful accents, both of the farmers and the customers. Like, oh, this is just like Sheboygan, Illinois, where I come from. And another one said, this is just like the farms we are down south. And so it brought people together to have this experience. We found the same thing was true when we opened up the market in Red Hook, Brooklyn, years later. And which was mainly, it was in a public housing project, and mainly black people lived there, but there were 2 generations of black people. The young, more professional people, and the older, traditional people who moved to New York from the South. And guess who the best customers were? the ones from the south. They say they saw their own farming community. We actually had one farmer in the market who came from North Carolina. That's important to find our region. He came from Red Springs, North Carolina, and I went there to visit his farm. Wanted to go check him out. And he would bring things like scuppernong grapes. Nobody ever heard of them before. They were local to North Carolina. So, let's see, we've probably said enough about the first market. And so, of course, we covered budgeting and most things. The J.M. Kaplan Fund was a wonderful fund because they really loved the market. And they continued to fund us for 12 years. And by that time, we were able to wean off all our funders. And I think the market can run on the fees that are charged to farmers, although I think you still get grants for special programs. Like when Chris is doing new farmers and, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We picked 59th Street obviously because of its location, and then we got a phone call that first year, 1976, from Me Too Baxter, who was the head of the Manhattan Planning Office for the City Planning Department. Victor Herrera was the chair at that time. And they were trying to have survive. And this is the report we put out in that same year, 1976, so we opened. And they said, won't you come to Union Square? And I said, why there? They said, because Union Square is going downhill. We'd always get calls from people going downhill. And come and rescue Union Square. And it was known as Needle Park then, for a very good reason. In fact, when I went in with a friend one day to walk in the park, someone came, you don't want to come in here, it's not safe. Here's one of the dealers. And so the first years we opened, you'll see there's very little activity. But I want to say a little about Union Place. This is one of two public places in Manhattan. There are none other elsewhere in New York City. A public place is defined in the New York City Charter as under the jurisdiction of the Parks Department. But it isn't exactly defined what it is. It's really a street, but it's not used for traffic. And this north end was used for parking cars for most of its career. Let's look at more of this. And so at this time, and the map was prepared in 1811 by Randell, and he prepared the 1811 grid of the entire city. And there's a portion in one of the reports where he describes trying to lay out his surveying equipment. And he had to cut through the brush to survey these avenues in 1806 when he was doing the work. It was that a wild place. So when these avenues came in, and the reason it's called Union is because it's a union of two major streets, Bloomingdale Road and the Boston Post Road. And they come closer together here than any other place. So it was not a park in the beginning, it was a place, and there was nothing there. It was just open. In fact, part of it extended south 3 blocks. Now, when it became a park in 1835, it was designed by Olmsted. And as you can see, it's a very different park than it is today. It's a very loose, open park, and it was on grade. There was no subway then, or at least there was no subway mezzanine. And then this is what it looked like on the ground. And you can see already at the north end that there are cars parked here, traffic side. But in addition to, and you see it's a very open park, and it was a pavilion then, but it's called a tennis pavilion, and it was built in wood. It's called a women's tennis pavilion, for that matter. And the word tennis is interesting, you'll see another reference to it coming up. So we're not the first market in Union Square. This was there before 1900. And these are flower sellers, and they sold around on two sides of Union Square. And that space is a public place. Now this plan is the plan that we came to in 1976, and when we got the call from Me Too Baxter, and And you can see it has what we call a Union Jack plan with a flagpole in the middle and a pavilion at the right end, and you can see the parking there. And the parking at that time was controlled by the city Department of Traffic. This was before we had a Department of Transportation. And we dealt with a commissioner there called Ted Caraguso. And we said to the Parks Department, the Planning Department, if you want us here, you have to get the agreement of these city agencies to our being here. And they did. And they also changed their plan. You can see here, that's where the market is. You see what they show? Tennis courts. Which is right, I referred to tennis before. And so there's the pavilion next to the tennis courts right there. And this is the 1976 plan. It was called Union Square Revitalization. And so I said, well, if we're going to be there, why don't you change the plan and show the market in that place? And they did. And put the market in. Some things happened that first year which are important to remember. When we put out a newsletter, and for several years in a row, we kept in touch with our community through the newsletter. We also were fortunate, one of the things Bob Norstad did, a great choice he made. He got in touch with John McPhee, who wrote a book on oranges. It's a great book. It has, if you close the book and look at the outside edges, the pages are all orange. And what the book tells you is that oranges aren't orange. They're really ripe and they're green. But what the producers were doing were coloring them orange, because that's what everybody expected them to look like. Oranges do mature to an orange color, but they couldn't wait for that, so that's why they're coloring them. So he said, you can eat a green orange. It's green on the outside, it's just as tasty and delicious as the one that's orange. And anyway, Bob, he had done a lot of good environmental writing, and Bob contacted him and said, would you come and look at our market? So he did, and in the second year, he worked at one of the markets in Harlem, working behind the stand. So he got a point of view that nobody else writing about the market could have gotten. And so he got to know the customers and what their viewpoints were and what they said. And he wrote an article initiated in the New Yorker. The article was called Giving Good Weight. That article subsequently became a part of a larger book called Giving Good Weight. And this article was reproduced by a congressman from California in the Congressional Record. And so every member of Congress saw it. And we weren't new. I mean, we modeled our market after an earlier one in Syracuse, run by the Chamber of Commerce in Syracuse. And the director of the chamber is a woman named Susan Snook. And she shared her experience of what it did for downtown Syracuse. She said, we surveyed our customers, and we found that 35% of our customers shop elsewhere than the market. In other words, the market brought people to shop downtown Syracuse. That was the purpose in doing it, and it's still running today. Syracuse is also the home of an important wholesale estate market as well. We did a lot of brochures like this. This one was important. It's called Taste of the Season. Greenmarket still does a variant. We listed every crop sold in the market, not every one, most of the major ones, in color. And the color versions are showing when it's in season. The gray versions are when it's out of season, but it's still sold out of refrigeration or dry storage like potatoes. We did this to publicize the purpose of the market so people understand the connection with the farms. And then 4 years later, New Yorker ran us again as a cover. But they didn't define it as Greenmarket, but everybody knew what it was. In those first years, this was one of the earliest maps I have that I produced called Greenmarket Past and Present. And we produced this in 1990 and listed all the markets in Manhattan, plus the total list is 7 in Brooklyn, 1 in Queens, and 3 in Bronx, and we hadn't yet gotten to Staten Island. But it lists those who have opened and closed, and those that were still open in 1990. And of the ones in Manhattan, 13 were still there, and 10 had closed. When we totaled all the grows, there were 16 still existing and 19 had closed. So Greenmarket is not always a success. That's why when people would call us and say, would you come to our community, we don't have any stores. The reason is people weren't buying food for some reason, or at least not in food stores. So we learned the same thing. Although we had individual farmers, there's one, Frank Cole, who came from New Jersey, and he would set up by himself on 175th Street. No other farmers were there. He was very happy. He liked his customers. He found friendships. And he was also one of the 2 farmers when we opened indoors at the World Trade Center before it collapsed. And we were downstairs in the mezzanine level where everybody was pouring out of the trains. And we had a farmer from New Jersey and a farmer from New York, because it was representing 2 states. And it made sense to do that. And it subsisted for a while, but not very long. It's not a good shopping experience, but we went outdoors in front of the World Trade Center. And despite the fact we were not in a residential community, which is preferred, it's such a huge community of people, it did very well. And in fact, when the explosions, when the buildings came down in 9/11, yeah. The market was operating. And my manager there, Joe, was managing 2 markets, that one and one at the Federal Building. And when the first plane struck, everybody thought it was the usual explosion in one of the buildings, which had happened before at a high level. So they continued selling and saying, well, there's a fire in the building. And then when the second plane hit, they realized it was something different. And they all got up and began leaving. And some of them didn't even drive away. They just left their trucks and walked away. Joe Caniglio, the manager, went up to the other market and wanted to make sure those farmers were okay. And then some trucks were left there. And some later photographs, you can see the ash all over the trucks. So that was the end of that market, and as well as many things. And we've never come back, although I think there's an attempt to set up along the road at some time. It hasn't happened yet. So coming back to Union Square, and when we started, it was a bust. But we had these shadows being cast across it by the secondary buildings. As you can see, I had put the camera behind the eggplant to show any activity. It was a really happy market, not like it is today. That's our team starting. That's Bob Lewis on the left. I'm on the right. Lisa McLaughlin was head of council on the environment. She was executive director. And then 3 of my sons all helped pitched in. So it was a family enterprise. We had no employees. I also worked on drawings. I did that shadow study because I was a planner at the planning office. And I made a drawing of the County Triangle, which show enlarging the triangle. This never happened, this proposal. And also showing the Union Square West as basically a pedestrian street and paving the whole square. I'd still like to do that as one paved square, not the streets running through a square, through which cars be permitted to drive on occasion. I'll come to that next. I guess we can move over to West Village. So the West Village is shown on, we started at Gansevoort. I was hoping Arthur Stoliar could join us tonight. He was one of the first people who urged us to put a market in West Village. And other people did, and they said, why don't you bring a market here? And they suggested Gansevoort Street. Now there's a tradition of markets in the West Village. This is a 1911 Bromley map, and in it you can see here is what's called the West Washington Market. And boats came in here, and I think some trains might have come here. There were active train tracks along here, up this way. And so a great deal of produce was brought into the West Washington Market. And now there are outdoor stands here where farmers would set up. Before I go to the view of those stands, I want to show you that the Canard Pier is here. And that Abingdon Square is here. No, I'm sorry, the Gansevoort market is here, which is the first market, and the Abingdon market is down here, just to give you a sense of where things are. This is the puzzle we have at home, and it's, what it shows is that same market is right here, the public market. This is before the West Side Highway was built. Right here is the Gansevoort Hotel, not the Gansevoort Hotel, the Jane Hotel, where the survivors of the Titanic were brought when it went down in 1917, I think, no, earlier.
12.
12? 12, yeah. So it was still a marketplace then. The West Washington market was here then, the outdoor market was here. So that part of history is kept in this jigsaw puzzle. This is the West Washington market. It's a wholesale farmers market. Look how packed that is. Food was brought through the piers over here, and I don't know how they had horse and wagons got here. They might have come in by train, because I know that the farmers came in from Long Island, where the wagons were put on a freight train, and the horses were put on a car in front of the train. I guess the farmers rode somewhere. So the actual farm wagons and horses came in by train, as people do today from Long Island. They might have done the same thing then, I don't know. So this is a very busy wholesale market. So when the first Gansevoort market came here, we weren't treading new territory. Now this is the first Gansevoort market. I think Don Keller came here then, Mascot I think came, apple farmer. One farmer came here in those days, and I think that this is his truck here, I can't remember his name. He was a farmer who came from Delaware. Now if we drew a circle around New York, with a 250-mile radius, it would incorporate the Finger Lakes and Geneva, but also incorporate Delaware, so why not Delaware? And Delaware had a good farming country. So this farmer came, it's not shown here, but he did come with a yellow school bus. And this school bus had no seats in it, but it was stacked from floor to ceiling with melons. And he literally sold all his melons. And his daughter came to sell for him. She was barefoot and gave him dressed, believe it or not. Barefoot. So the move came sometime after 1990. Not sure what impelled the move, but it came with consideration of two factors. One is Gansevoort did not have a resident population. It was still a meat packing district. So there were nobody living there. Now, a beautiful place. Arthur Stoliar wanted to rename it Market Square, the cobblestone streets and all. But the word people shopping, not enough. And the potential here seemed much greater because two major avenues, Hudson and 8th Avenue, came together here. We were near major subway and bus transportation, and a lot of people lived here. You see the size of the buildings here. A lot of stores here, it was good shopping here. So it made sense to come here. But I was nervous about one thing, and that is just a park here. And where the farmer's going to set up their stands isn't going to crowd the park too much. And the park was very unpleasant then. It was all paved. The few flowers you see here at this corner, at the other corner, were planted by volunteers who lived in this high-rise building. But otherwise, it was just simply an asphalt area. But the park was historic. It was one of the earliest parks in New York City. But the only piece of history left was the stone foundation of the fence. But that's really important. So, George Melodigus, New York City Parks Department. George, stand up so people can see you. He's very he designed these parks. And I thought, and he approached like the Parks Department always did, under Bronson Binger, they're talking community people, what do you think? How do you want to approach the park? And I thought, well, like Jackson Square, the entrances should be in the center, and the corners should be secluded seating places. That's what Jackson Square is, and I thought that worked well. And he thought, no, it should really use the corners as points of entry. And then it would become an alternate walk along the avenues. And that was really so brilliant as a concept. And so we, as people living there, use the park much, much more often than we ever did before. And at the same time, it became beautiful. With this lovely lawn in the center, and the ground rises slightly. The statue of the doughboy was moved from here down to here. One thing that was lost was the great patina the statue had. That's not George's fault. Somebody else in the park's party doesn't like patinas. And then the marvelous landscaping around the edge, floral landscaping, shrubs, no trees, and then street trees around the outside. So it's indeed an attractive place. So with great trepidations, we considered putting a market here. Here's how it looks in the interior. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. And it's indeed a beautiful, rich park. Here's some of the farmers setting up their food. And this is, of course, where they're going. This is Mary Canan's farm. And she's one of the sellers in the Abingdon Square Market. And she has an interesting history. She also sells in this another historic market on the east side, the St. Mark's in the bar, right? And St. Mark's has a very early history. And she goes there. Another interesting connection with history in coins. She had a customer who came to her with antique American coins, 3-penny coins, to shop. And of course, she has a great collection of antique coins. This is what farming is all about. This is planting out. When you set out plants, have a water tank in the front. People sit in the bank in the back, and the plants are deposited and covered in the ground as they're watered. They're probably moving in our direction because water will follow the plant. And normally a lot of things are not going from seed. The seeds are started in the greenhouse, and so they can get the plants out earlier in the season now for the seeds to harvest. He's in the market now, Muddy Farm, Dave Siegel and Jessica. And they have a great range of greens and root crops, tomatoes, everything. Great people too. This is what a farmer's field looks like. And they're very innovative farms, like the markets are in them. We're not talking about large-scale farmers. We're talking about small-scale farms, small family farmers, who really get into the ground with their hands as well as the machinery. And of course, this is a satisfied farmer, not in one of the markets we're talking about, but actually this is 102nd Street on the west side. I should mention in passing that we did also, at the urging of a resident on the Lower East Side, start a market on Tompkins Square Park. If you think I was nervous about putting a market in the park, on the edge of the park, I certainly was nervous about putting one in a park. And Ronnie Solberg and Jean Merrill owned a house on 10th Street. They have done a wonderful book called The Pushcart War, which is about a battle between a pushcart vendor and the tractor trailers who won them out of the way so they could unload goods from California. And the pushcarts really got started with local produce. Marcus Marx, who was Manhattan Borough president in 1920, started farmers markets at the foot of the Queensboro Bridge. And when I was looking for farmers at Greenmarket, I went up to somebody named Monahan, who was in Rockland County, and he was in his 80s when this was in 1974. When I was 5, I was looking for farmers. And he said he was too old to come to the market, but he told me that he was the first farmer to cross the Queensboro Bridge, that he came over by boat in the morning and went back on the bridge in the afternoon. And that market was the one run by the borough president, Marcus Marx. And in his report, you can see a picture of the market, big sign saying farmers only. So we're not new to this game. He started it And at the end of the day, and this was told me by John Monahan, this farmer, who came to that market, and would have been great if he'd be able to come to Greenmarket too and couple these two together. He came and he was very young, and he said at the end of the day, at 5 o'clock, a bell was rung. At that point, that wholesale market was closed, and the peddlers ran forward and loaded up their carts. The push carts, which Gene now loaded up, and they wheeled these carts down to Lower Manhattan, to the village, to various locations in the city, to sell the fresh produce for the next couple of days off their cart, as long as it's saleable. I think it would be great to do it today. Although we have enough farmers markets, maybe we don't need them, but to have Greenmarket push carts, where at the end of the day, instead of taking this food home, or we do give it to City Harvest, and maybe all of it gets given away. But putting it on carts is going to be a bad idea in communities that people can't get to a market. So, with that, any comments, questions? And I just want to thank you all for coming. It's really wonderful to have you here. Obviously, what makes the markets work are you. People who come and love the food and love the farmers, love us. Thanks.